welcome to Body Story with Coach Coco.
Hi, Coach Coco. How are you?
I am wonderful. A childhood friend. Nicole,
Yes.
you are a high school homie, honey. You done know me since what, 13, 14 years old?
Mhm.
What?
Hey.
It is an honor to
Yeah.
have you here. Please introduce yourself, who you are, where you live, and why you said yes to sharing your body story today.
All right. My name is Nicole O'Brien.
Mhm.
As Coco just mentioned, I've known Coco since high school from San Antonio, Texas, and that's where I still live. How I identify myself is I'm a Mexican millennial mother.
Okay, hey.
Because I'm tired of all these labels, so I'm going to make my own labels.
There you go.
Um, And I said yes because it's Coco and I've known her for a long time and I see her mission and her drive and I agree with it and I respect it. And so that's why I'm here.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you, Nicole. This is an honor to learn about your body story and hopefully touch the life of another woman that's listening. So let's get started. Where do you want to start with your body story?
Um,
Where would you like to start?
let's see. I think I'm going to start with motherhood. Um, because obviously it started when I was younger, but motherhood was the key catalyst to like my transformation into
Okay.
where I'm at now. Um, so we'll start there. If that's
Yeah,
okay.
let's start. How many children do you have?
So I have four kids.
Oh
They're
my.
11, 9, 7, and 5.
Ooh, mama knocked them out.
Mhm. I did.
Gosh.
They're crazy. And I worked that whole time. And every time I got pregnant and came, like, had my baby and was on maternity leave, I always came back and I got a promotion.
Mm,
It was like a really interesting time in my life, very
mm,
stressful. Um, and it's really key too, because the four kids, like, every kid, my life was so different
yeah.
and I can see that in their personalities now. Um,
Really?
yeah, it's really interesting. So, like, my first one, I was just like, doo-doo-doo, like a fairy tale motherhood. And my oldest son is just like the same, like, so just like innocent and like the nicest kid would give anybody anything off his bat. And then they get a little bit rowdier. They go along. I was
What's
more
so,
stressed.
how did you feel? How old were you when you had your son, Nicole, your firstborn?
I was 27.
Okay.
And then I guess I was 33 with the last one.
Okay. So
So,
God. So how did you what can you talk to us about how your body story, you said that's where your transformation started. What was that like for you being pregnant at 27? How did that tap you into your body differently?
so I think from like a higher level, my body, like, and culturally, like, it's like what men think of our bodies, right?
Mm,
And our worth is like, oh, you look good, like the way
mm,
you look, your outward appearance.
okay.
And I was at 27, I very much had that mindset.
Okay.
Um, and when I got pregnant, like my first checkup, the doctor told me, the male doctor told me,
Okay.
well, you gained 5 pounds. And I was like, okay. And that like really triggered, like it didn't trigger me, but it really stuck with
Mm,
me. And so
why?
then, well, because as far as like being overweight was not being liked by men or other people, people
So he
wouldn't
had a
say, oh,
tone. Was there like a tone in his voice when he said it or
it was a
something?
bit of a tone, yeah. And perhaps I was like overreacted to it or
Mm,
whatever. But what it did is it made me go back to work and I created an Excel spreadsheet and created a food log, an exercise log, and a weight log because I didn't want to gain a ton of weight.
really?
Yeah. So that was like a big moment. And that kind of all that kind of just reaffirmed or kind of was like a summary of my whole life before that. Like your weight, your appearance was really tied in and integral with your worth. Um,
How did you feel in high school, Nicole? Because that's where we met. And I just remember, as someone who was just still deeply uncomfortable in my body in high school, just not really connected to it and really didn't appreciate it and love it and honor it the way I do now. But I remember we were in sports together. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
paying attention to how the other girls, you included, looked in your uniform versus how I looked in my basketball uniform. And just always wondering kind of what were you all thinking about your body and your clothes, particularly in our basketball uniform? Was look something that you all were conscious and thinking of? And so to hear what you're saying right now tells me that
Oh
it
yeah,
might have been.
absolutely. Um, because for me, and I feel like a lot of women, our looks are what drive our worth in this culture that we've been conditioned in. And now I know that's not true. Obviously, that's where my body story started with the motherhood.
Yeah.
But I think culturally also, I'm a half Mexican. I look white, but I'm half Mexican, half white.
Hmm.
And from a Mexican culture, Hispanic culture, it was very much about appearances. Like my grandparents were very poor. But she always had my mom and her sister's hair brushed and clean clothes. Like it was very much about appearances. I remember my grandma always saying like, brush your hair and don't wear that, and telling my mom that even when she was an adult.
Yeah.
So I think just like the way you looked was just ingrained in my brain
Hmm.
from my family, my culture, my environment, my experiences, that was really tied to who you were and like how valuable you were really.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
even I remember seeing porn the first time,
Hmm.
and all the women on the porn were like skinny with big boobs, and
Yeah.
that just like reinforced those conditioning,
I
it
remember
was
you guys
horrible.
talking about that in high school. I was
Mm-hmm.
so behind everybody, Nicole. I would just be listening, just like, wow. And these kind of things I've been obsessed with since that age, Nicole. So the fact that
Yeah,
we're now here having such frank conversations as grown women is just so exhilarating to me.
yeah,
So
I
can I
agree.
ask you this, Nicole? Because even, to me, you've always been a beautiful spirit from the inside and definitely from the outside, and you've always maintained through the years your looks. And I think I see look at my mom who's a mother of four. My mom has always looked good to me. So being a mother has never taken away from her beauty and kind of how she presents herself to the world and pulls herself together. And
Mm-hmm.
I personally, I don't feel that there's anything wrong with presenting your best self in what you wear, how you look. What are your thoughts about that in your body story?
I agree with you that there's nothing wrong with it. Um, but at the same time, there's a fine line as to that's where you get your worth. Like I
Mm,
look good, so people say,
yes.
"Oh," needing that validation
Mm,
that comes from looking good and presenting
yeah.
yourself well.
Yeah.
I think that's where there's an issue, and I can only speak for myself. That's where I realized my issue was,
Mm,
because I always did keep myself presentable, not presentable, but like in shape, tried to
yeah.
um brush my hair, I don't know, just whatever I did,
Polished. Polished. You look
polished.
pulled together,
Yeah,
polished. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's a good thing. And I tell my
Yes.
my children the same thing. Like, if you don't want to brush your hair, then you know what? Then don't. But you're going to go out there and you're representing yourself, and that's what people are going to see you as, and that's your
Mm,
choice. That's not a
mm-hmm.
representation of me. And so they
Mm-hmm.
think about it. Um, but I think when back to your question, it's really like, are you getting your worth and your identity and your feel good from
Mm,
that presentation of yourself to the world? And for me, that answer was yes. And I didn't realize that until maybe a year or two ago. Um, and
mm.
then digging into that more is like, well, why? But that's probably off topic. But
That's my favorite. No, that's my favorite question in the world is why?
yeah, well,
It's not off topic at all, Nicole. I mean, that's a part of your body story, you know?
yeah, that's true. Um, so the past 3 or 4 years, since I quit my corporate job. I had a really high profile job at the country's largest independent refinery. Um, I traveled a lot to London, Canada on private planes, drank champagne. Like it was a really posh job, made really good
Mm-hmm.
money that I never thought I would ever could make.
Yeah.
But I felt like I was just losing myself, and like I had to sell myself to the corporate devil. And at that moment I said, I ain't doing that. So I quit.
Good for
And that
you,
was a
girl.
big catalyst for
Oh, so
me.
brave, so
Oh, I know,
courageous. Whew.
it was scary. And I'll tell you why I got my husband to agree, because he didn't want me to quit. And I
Okay.
told him, I said, you know, it's like I go to work every day and they, you know what, from behind me, like, and then
Wow.
turn me around and slap me in the face with their, you know what, and then,
Wow.
you know what,
You
on my,
you
you know
just
what,
gave it to him that visually, huh?
yes. And I said the words. Um,
Wow.
and I said, and they know I'll come back for more tomorrow.
Ooh.
And so
Wee.
his eyes were like, oh shit. And he was like, okay.
He's like,
And I
that's the
quit.
woman I married. She's gonna make sure
Uh-huh.
I understand.
Yes, clear. That's how men, they need it clear and concise.
Right? Texas guys. Ooh, Lord.
Hmm.
That's funny.
So that was a catalyst. Me quitting that job um, was the beginning of this journey, this transformation journey,
Yeah.
um, and healing, identifying why I was the way I was, healing that, acknowledging it, accepting it, and healing it, and being okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
And what that was for me was when I was 13 ish, 12 or 13, I was in 7th grade at Peace Middle School. Did
Yeah.
you go
I
to
went to
Peace?
Peace. Yep. Eighth grade.
Okay.
Yep.
So I was there in 7th grade, and my dad came down with his wife and his new daughter. And long story short, he was here for a few days visiting. They got upset, or I don't know exactly what happened, but I was waiting for them to pick me up to take us
Okay.
to SeaWorld,
Okay.
and he never showed up. And so we called his hotel and he wasn't there. He had checked out. And so my mom calls my grandma, his mom in Colorado where he lives, and says, well, what's going on? You know, they're not there. And so we track him down, and he's at a hotel like on the other side of town, like in Converse, Windcrest area, which
Mm-hmm.
is like 30, 40 minutes away. And so I'm like all rowdy. I'm like, well, you better take me there, mom. So
Yeah.
me and my best friend Courtney, who you know also from high school,
Yep.
the three of us went to that hotel, and we knocked on the door,
Okay.
and he didn't open the door. And then his wife said, you need to leave. I'm going to call the police. And my mom was like, Jim, just come meet your daughter in the lobby. Like this, you know, you need
Yes.
to meet your daughter. Like he left me, he didn't pick me up. Well, he never came down, and he didn't open the door. And I remember so vividly being in that lobby. And I remember like the lights, like it was those yellow fluorescent lights, and just being there, like what I remember is this is never going to happen to me again.
Ooh.
And and that moment really was the catalyst for why I became who I was. Because at that moment, and also not only am I not going to feel that way, but nobody else is going to feel this way. So I think that's where my overly nurturing and overly giving
Mm.
personality developed. And I always had it, but it became like on hyper overdrive.
Wow.
Um, and that's why I pushed myself so hard. And we joke because you and I were nominated most likely to succeed in high school.
Yes, we
And
were.
yeah, and that's now looking back, that's where it came from.
Mm.
Because I was never going to be financially dependent on anybody. I was never going to be
Mm.
hurt by anybody. Like I was going to do it on my own, because
Yes.
nobody's ever going to treat me like that.
Wow.
But then also, from a body story perspective and from my looks, it was very much a moment of why doesn't my dad want me? What's wrong with me? Like
Wow.
that's my dad, and what's wrong? And I don't remember having those thoughts when I was 13, but now as I've analyzed it and self-healed from it, because then it was always like I needed that validation from a
Yes.
male
Yes.
person.
Oh.
And why I I mean that was very instrumental in why I was the way I was in my relationships.
Yes. Oh,
Even
Nicole.
from high school,
Yeah.
it was crazy. And it took me like I literally just figured this out like very recently within the past year.
And that's why I mean we're women in our 30s. We're in our
Hmm.
late 30s. And so just to think about how we're still just coming to these realizations. Nicole, I resonate with your story so much and how you can look back and find what was the moment in my childhood, in preteen years, what was it that was that shift where
Hmm.
something shifted, a mindset, a way of being, how that relates to your body story. It's like this seeking of approval. And I know for
Yeah.
me, when my weight loss journey started, I was such a late bloomer. I told you I would love to sit back and just hear the stories, like, people messing around and having sex in high school and college. And I was just such a late bloomer. So when I started to lose weight and get this connection and feel comfortable in my body, it was this, in looking back, it was this seeking of approval. So
Hmm.
kind of how you get attention, how you can use and maneuver that to really make things work in your favor. But when you dig
That's,
deeper, asking why, where does this come from? And what really lights me up and makes me feel good. Geez,
hmm.
Nicole. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's oh
Yeah. And
wow.
my dad and I have like, he'd be okay for me saying this because
Yeah,
um, he and I have dealt with this in the past few years, and it's been a journey, and we're on a good path now.
that's
Um,
wonderful. That's a
yeah,
blessing. That's
yeah.
excellent. So how are you now as a woman? How do you feel currently right now in your body, Nicole? Mother of four,
Uh-huh.
like just still always looking fly. I mean, how do you feel?
Hey. Um, Now I feel this is the best I've felt about my body and myself, and realizing that my body is not just what it on the outside, but like how amazing the inside of our body is.
Mm,
And like I think motherhood or having my children really made me appreciate that more, because there's so many things that can go wrong, and just like the whole
yes.
process of conception, and these like amazing machines that God, or like some, I believe God, but whoever you believe,
Yes.
created.
Yes.
And realizing that like everything I need and want is inside me. And you hear that and it's so cliche, and you can't like visualize that
Mm.
easily. Most people can't, but finally realizing that and visualizing it for myself, it's like it's just
Oh,
the body awareness, and then even realizing like the how important our brain is,
mm.
and the brain body connection, and all the research that's coming out with that.
Yes,
And
Nicole.
with the like unresolved childhood trauma, like trauma is not necessarily just rape and physical abuse, but it's
Hmm.
emotional neglect and emotional absent parents and different things like that. How that those events shape your body and your brain, and
Can
how
you
you're.
think, can you tie Nicole to where you, since making that connection, where you have felt how your nervous system or some part of your body physically was manifesting trauma? Like when you think back, can you think of a time when maybe you were, because I think about pain a
Mm-hmm,
lot as I'm getting older. That is one, I stay active, I like to move, but I do notice that my body feels different pains at different times. They may stay away be free for 3 days and then go away. But
mm-hmm.
when I can think very intentionally, when there was a lingering pain, I can associate it with something else going on. Maybe something I was just kind of figuring out, like getting toxic stuff like thoughts out, but it was manifesting as pain in my body. Have you ever had that experience before?
um I think from a stress perspective,
Yeah.
definitely like your shoulders and neck, and I think a lot of people have that. I don't think I've had anything specific like what you experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what I do see now is how my body reacts to certain stimuli, like voices, anger. When
Mm.
I'm stressed, like, well, why am I stressed? And what is my body doing? Am I like scrunched up, or like is my heart racing? And just being more aware
Yeah.
of my body. Um, and I've noticed that a lot more recently. I've been consciously trying to work on that and realize that, so then I can just heal my nervous system
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Just like soften into it. A question popped into my head. It's a little off topic, but you're kind of bold. I feel like I can take it there.
Okay, I'm down.
Are you still really enjoying sex?
Oh, I love sex.
Oh.
I have 4 kids.
Can we talk about sex
Oh
for a
yeah,
little bit?
absolutely.
What do you feel is important about staying connected and enjoying sex as a woman?
What's important? I think really just that like flesh to flesh.
Mm,
Um, and it's interesting because now with the children, like seeing, everybody's always crying. They want their mama when they're babies, and then the men on the battlefield when they're dying, they're calling out for their mamas, and like how much authority and responsibility women have and mothers
mm,
have on humanity, right? And
mm.
like
Gosh.
my my daughter who's now 7, she's like she'll grab my breast and she's like, oh, it feels good. And it's like, well, at first I was uncomfortable, but it's like, well, I have these for her and look how
Mm,
strong she is, and she drank milk out of there. So if it
mm.
makes her feel good, like go for it. Like, oh, she touches on my shirt. But then my husband too is like, oh, woo. And it's like, wow, like we have a lot of
The
authority,
power. It is
power,
incredible.
and we don't realize it.
Mm,
And once we do, like this world, all this craziness is because there's no
mm,
respect for mothers and children.
mm,
That's my
mm.
opinion.
But honestly, I mean, I think it's such a good point to share, Nicole, because I think there are a lot of women that are walking around disconnected to that power. Really not, and
Like,
not just like the old cliche of the power between your legs, because that is powerful, but
mm-hmm,
really just the essence, the aura, the like what it means to be a woman, what it
mm-hmm,
means to be connected. And even like I've been having the conversation more and more, Nicole, to women who are mothers and who aren't, who want to be mothers, who are freezing eggs, who are thinking about motherhood. So it's just, even as a 38-year-old woman who doesn't have a child yet, it is on my mind every day. But I can
yeah,
still feel this connection to womanhood and motherhood and our power just from being a woman. And that I
mm-hmm,
think is really linked into my fascination with this body story and how which women are connected to their bodies, which are still disassociated, and how can we have such candid conversations so that we love and connect to it? Because this is what we live in.
mm-hmm.
So to hear a mother of 4 be like, yeah, I love sex, I just feel like more women need to talk about that and express like where we get pleasure and what we enjoy. And I should feel comfortable sharing that with our partner so we can get pleased,
Well,
period.
the problem, I agree, but I think the challenge is we don't know if
Mm,
you're disassociated from your body, or you can't identify, and you can't like you don't feel worthy of your body, or value, you don't feel that your body is valuable or worthy,
yeah.
then I think it's a struggle to know, like, well, what do I like?
Mm,
And then it's hard if you don't know, you can't tell your
very
partner
good
either.
point. Yeah.
And I think a lot of us, for me, it's like what you see on TV and the porn or on the movies.
Hmm.
And now it's like, that is so messed up. Like, that is not the way it should be.
And it's really, I was talking to a friend recently, she's married, about porn actually, and about how that has really, for people who have no other connection to intimacy, they're watching this and replicating it, and just the false, like how, a man can watch that and think that what he's doing in that porn is bringing pleasure to that woman because she's being dramatic, and that
Yeah.
is being replicated in real life. It's just, it's really unfortunate because I think the intimacy and that connection and the touching and the buildup in sex and allowing women to take their time, because it takes a lot of time for our bodies really to get heated up and ready and be really ready to climax the way we deserve. It just takes us a lot longer than men.
Absolutely. Because
Yeah.
we're such more emotional creatures. And um, like for me, like, I'll just say it, like, I'm good at sex. Like, I like sex. And, but
Yeah.
I think it's,
When you're tapped into your womanhood, you just know, like, listen, I get down with the get down.
yeah, I like it. I'm not ashamed.
I love it
Um,
too. Most likely to succeed. Holmes
cheers
High
to
School,
that.
BC, you did well. You did well. I'm sorry.
It's
Go
funny.
ahead. Go ahead,
No,
Miss
no,
I Like
no.
Sex. Go ahead.
Well, I think I'm good at it because I I know what my partner, and my husband's my only partner now, but I'm like emotionally in touch with my partner and their needs, and
Yes.
give them what they need, and even they don't verbalize it. And I think
Mm,
what I've come to the conclusion is that every human needs love.
yes.
And what is that? And to me, that's really just as simple as acknowledgement and
Mm,
acceptance and affection.
mm,
And with COVID, with these masks and stuff, when you walk down the grocery store aisle and nobody, like, people are in their masks and they're just pushing their carts and they don't look at you, like, there's
mm.
no acknowledgement of yourself or of your body, of your space. And
Yes.
it's a fundamental need for
Yes.
people with living spirits to be acknowledged
Yep.
and to be shown that acceptance and the affection. And I think sex is like the ultimate act of that,
Mm,
really, if done in a loving way.
yeah. But that's the
So
biggest part. It's the that it's a connection, and it changes through the years. You've been married a while, but it does evolve. Like when you're single and you're having sex in your early 20s versus late 20s, early 30s versus it really evolves as you evolve. So that
yeah,
connectivity to our body is really where it starts.
yeah,
My
absolutely.
gosh. Is there
Yeah.
anything, Nicole, when you think of your younger self, because I want teenage girls to watch this and women in college and women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, just all ages to watch and listen to this. What would be something you'd like to share or just kind of leave us with?
um I would say that for my younger self and for teenagers and younger females watching this is to appreciate your body. And specifically, like, every woman men has a period, our menstrual cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and how society has shamed that and made it a dirty thing, and
Mm,
that is not correct.
mm,
And I think it's something that needs to be spoken about more, and, like, the life-giving cycle
mm.
that it literally is. um and to I would tell those young girls, like, your body is amazing
Mm,
and you respect it, because without you, like, humanity will not continue, and
ooh.
society is not appreciating you right now, but that's going to change. And that's why we have COVID, because God is upset because we're not appreciating the women and respecting them. And
Oh, my Nicole.
that's what I would say.
Can I, before we, because now you've just brought something up that I have to ask a follow-up on. How do you
Okay.
feel when you get your period? Like when your period comes, what is there something different that you feel now?
Now, yes, because I read this really good book. I can't remember the name, but um, it was like this African queen. It was like a spiritual book.
Okay.
And she was talking about the womb and
Yeah.
how the womb is our source of life, and how the womb remembers everything. And that's
Mm,
where, like, you're bleeding from, right? And her, like, to summarize it, it was basically like you need to respect your womb, and your womb remembers your sexual partners and all the way you treated it. um and
mm.
to, like, get get in harmony and, like, heal those issues you have with your womb, because
Wow.
that's life, literally. um
It is.
and that book that she wrote, this poem, it was really good. It was like, oh crap. And I showed my 72-year-old aunt that poem, and she's like, oh my God, like, wow, I never
Wow.
thought of it like that.
If
And
you remember the name of this, you have to send this to me, Nicole.
oh, I will,
Okay.
definitely. I have the book on my shelf, I just can't remember the name. um but it was like, whoa. And then her thing was like to look at your
Girl, I'd be taking
vagina
a mirror
and
and
the
look at it for sure.
mhm, get
Yeah.
to know it, be intimate with
Yes.
it. And it sounds so weird, but it's like, well, why not? It's my body. And
Yes.
once I did that,
Mm,
like, my periods were more calm. They were like a
mm.
more pleasurable experience. Um, and being more in tune with my cycle, and getting it more regular, and it being lighter and easier for me. And then
Yes.
also, not, I always use tampons, but, like, stopping using those, because, like, why are you sticking
Yes.
something up that you don't know
Yes.
what's in there?
Girl, I you are talking my language right now.
Yes, and your body is designed to release that blood,
Yes, just be
and you're
free.
soaking it up in there, and that's not good.
Wow,
Um,
Nicole. And you know what? It has evolved. That kindness, that gentleness, that compassion to the womb in our body. I've even noticed, Nicole, this is going to sound odd. Mine lasts a solid 5 days. By day three, there is an essence and an energy that I give off in the world that really attracts men. Day three
mhm,
specifically. It is
really,
the weirdest and really like an energy from them, like positive. It's like a good bubble energy. It's almost like fairy tale, like little interactions, but it's day three. And I've just thought about this, like, because there's a different energy that I carry now when I have my period, and it's because of that kind of womb healing and that just really honoring, like, this is powerful what happens every month. And not only that, that I share this with women around the world.
that's
That
amazing.
blows my mind, Nicole. I share this experience for X amount of years with women around the world. It connects us. It is so
Yeah,
freaking powerful to me.
absolutely.
It's
And
tremendous.
we were talking earlier about the root, identifying the root cause of whatever.
Yeah.
And a few months ago, I had the question, like, well, what's going on? Why is the world the way it is? And just reading a lot more about different things, history, and just all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people say we've had all these movements, BLM, trans, all sorts of stuff, right?
Hmm.
George Floyd, all sorts of things. And it's
Exactly.
always about like white
Uprising,
people.
revolutions, changing things up. Yep.
Yeah. And which I it just is what it is, right? It doesn't even matter my opinion. But it's like, why? Why are we in this situation? Like, what is the root of this situation?
Okay.
And I thought, okay, a lot of people blame patriarchy or white people. I'm like,
Okay.
okay. And I worked in an oil company and it was
Mhm.
all white men. It
I'm
was like
sure.
classic boys club, right?
I'm sure.
And so I've had all these experiences with these old white men. Um, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that sucks. And my husband's an older white man. He's like 50, how old is he? 58 years old.
Okay.
Um, and I'm like, are they the problem? Are they the root of this? And I'm like, it just didn't feel right.
Okay.
And I thought, well, what's giving them this authority? Right? Like we talked about
Hmm.
power and authority. Like what's giving these white men, old men, all this authority?
Okay.
I thought, like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Like,
I agree. I agree.
and, and so I'm asking God, like, what's going on here? And I started reading the Bible, and I was like, oh shit. Like, I believe in God. I believe in the Christian Bible. But
Yeah.
now that I've read it, I think that
Hmm.
it has been grossly misinterpreted. And
Mm.
it's very clear that the women in the Bible have a ton of power, and these men are trying to repress it.
Okay.
And it's like, oh
The
crap.
stories are very powerful. Very
But
powerful.
you have to actually go read them. And
Yeah.
women are being told, you can do this, you can do that, you need to be this, you need to be that. And from my perspective, I was running 1,000 miles an hour. So I never
Yeah.
had time to sit down and read anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I did, when God forced me to, it's like my eyes were like, whoa. And when you were talking about the womb, like look at Revelation chapter 22, the end of the Bible, and
Okay.
look at it and see what
How do you connect that to the
visualizes.
womb? How does that connect to the womb for you, Nicole?
Well, I have to read it to you because they're talking the the new Garden of Eden is the womb, like the tree of life. You just have
Mm.
to read it. I can't quote it, but I can find the Bible right now.
Revelation 22.
Hmm. It's
Okay.
the end
I'll
of the
I'll take a
Bible.
look at I will look at that. Because
I can
I'm a
pull.
storyteller. I love stories. This is okay,
Yeah.
we're going on a little tour. So
Yes.
yeah, it sounds like in the last few years, Nicole, a part of your body story has really been, it sounds like layers. And as a Christian woman, you're gonna go to the Bible, but it sounds like there's been layers of things that you've been reading and kind of paying extra special attention to and asking why. Are you
Yes.
coming to any conclusions for you? What conclusions are you coming to for yourself?
For myself, the conclusion is that we have the power. We have the authority. I have the power. I have the authority.
Yeah.
And that's a blessing and a curse, and you have to use it responsibly. And
Mm.
it starts with yourself. I think too, there's a lot of, for me, there's a lot of talk about self-care, self-worth, self-value.
Yep.
There's a whole industry around it.
There
Like,
is. It's a buzzword, and some people saying it don't even really honor it and know what it is. So yes, I hear that. Yep.
but you can't do any of that if you can't identify yourself.
Mm.
And in my corporate career, I was a trader. So I bought and sold oil,
Okay.
and you, the value of that oil was basis what two people agreed it was, what
Mm.
you and I, the two market participants, agreed what it was.
Yep.
But you had to know what you were putting the value on, right? You had to
Yep.
see the item, you had to know the properties of the item, the oil, you had to know everything, the characteristics of that item, so that
Okay.
you could put a proper valuation on it, and then
Mm-hmm.
you can exchange the money.
Okay.
Well, it's the same thing with us. Like,
Mm.
if you can't self-identify yourself and your
Yes.
properties and your characteristics, like, then it's like it doesn't even exist, and there's no way
Yes.
you could put a valuation. And in my
Mm.
opinion, it's like we're letting men, and I'm not a man hater, I'm not like feminist, like, oh my gosh, I'm just like a
But
mother, like,
you're an empowered woman though, Nicole, and this is what drew me to you as a teenager. We were raised by strong women, so it is what it is, honestly.
yeah, yeah. And it's, you have to self-identify. And
Mm.
I've been reading, and I never read ever. Like,
Wow.
I didn't start reading
That
until like last
surprises
year,
me, Nicole.
because I was always busy doing
Yeah,
stuff,
that's
because I
true.
got my worth from that too, being doing and
Yeah,
being a people pleaser and stuff.
yeah.
Um, but I read this, I haven't read it all, but it's like the Femme Mystique.
Okay.
And
Ooh.
it was, I think it was 50s, 60s, and it was credited as being a big movement a big catalyst for the feminist movement.
Okay.
Like, from the housewives to we're empowered women and can go to college and stuff, which is great. But what I circled in it was the question of who am I? And what I realized is that society doesn't help us answer that question. And in fact, society exploits that weakness that we have. Like, who am I?
But
Because most people,
is
you
it
ask,
on society though? Is it on society to determine that?
well, it's on the family unit, I think, as a
Mm.
mother,
Okay.
right? And what has
Mm.
society done? Like, most families are in different and not great situations.
Mm.
There's not a mother and father or two loving parents, whether they're women, boy, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But all these kids, including my kids, were in daycare. Like, other people are around them, teaching them.
Mm.
And we're busy with our careers or doing whatever we got to do, getting our
Mm-hmm.
self-worth from me. I can only say I was getting my self-worth from work. So I was
Mm.
working my balls off. And my kids were being around these other people. So I didn't know
Mm.
what, they were around good people, but
Yeah.
I'm their mother. I'm
Mm.
the one that is their filter for the
And
world.
I just to hear you say this, Nicole, like I have these conversations with my father, my dad's quite conservative. He has more older fashioned values. So I do love hearing both from my very progressive liberal mom and my conservative dad. I find to hear from both of them, it helps me understand where I lie. And my dad has brought back, he looks at me and where I am in my life and my age. And he's a staunch believer. He's just like, I feel like, you know, if the career and all that focus wasn't your path, he's like, I feel like you would be married with children. And it's a very, even just saying it out loud, it sounds like such an old fashioned kind of perspective, but it doesn't, nothing about that I'm insulted by, because my goal really in life I would love to be a mother and a wife, but that doesn't take it all away from the question of who am I, which
Mhm.
is somebody who's meant to put energy into the world and motivate and heal and ask questions. So that doesn't separate from really what I know to be my truth and my core. I feel like it can
Yeah,
be a both. It can really be a
absolutely.
both. So that's kind of even what I'm hearing you say right now, Nicole, in this like searching, like what has this search revealed about how you're
Mhm.
landing right now as a mom with the corporate world experience and now really focusing on your family and raising your children?
Yeah.
That's a unique part of your story.
Yeah. And I've also, for whatever reason, I've not just the corporate world and now a stay-at-home mom, but I've also had a lot of experience with nonprofit world,
Mm,
um, religious world,
hmm.
and politics.
Yeah.
And I did that. Part of this, when I quit my job, I went on this kind of 2-year journey of self life, I guess. And I didn't do it on purpose. It just happened. But that's, now looking back, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I went and learned and I wanted to see how things worked and what the thought processes are of other people.
Yeah.
Um, because you can't change anything and you can't fix anything and you can't appreciate anything really unless you know how it really works
Mm,
and unless you've
I agree.
experienced it.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
People like to have a lot of judgments without having any experience. That's why it's very easy for me to silence things like that.
yeah,
Opinions, especially about even our own bodies and like with women, it's just people have opinions about stuff, but I'm like, oh, but you don't have experience with it. So that's easy for me to quiet you up easily.
exactly. And I think what you just said is like also, I'm backtracking, what I would tell younger girls
Yeah.
and boys,
Yeah.
because I have
Yep.
2 sons and 2 daughters and they go through their own things.
Yes.
Um,
You're right.
and uh, yeah, I mean, this world is a rough place and some of the families in our homes are not, are a rough place. And in San Antonio,
Mm,
it's a really rough place and it shouldn't be. I mean, I'm a
mm.
businesswoman. If there's a problem, you got to find a solution that works, right? And if that plan A doesn't work, you have plan B, C, D, E, F. I worked at a 24/7 refinery and I fed 13 refineries and there was always issues. And you
Hmm.
couldn't go to the boss and say, oh, it didn't work. Give me more money, but this is not going to work. Like it doesn't work. Like it doesn't make any sense. And that's what's happening in our world.
Mm.
Um, and that's why God sent COVID because he's not very happy.
Oh, oh, Nicole, we're getting our extra stuff into our body stories. You put two opinionated women in an interview. It's gonna be spicy.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Well,
so I Go ahead,
I
babe.
pulled up I pulled up Revelation 22.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna, if do you mind if I read it to you real fast?
Please go ahead.
Okay. Because this womb and woman and body, like
And
humanity,
this
is
is,
very
Nicole,
important.
this is your body story. That's why, it's very important to me. I'm a woman of the world. I always have been. It's one of the blessings of being growing up an Air Force kid. I have people with all different backgrounds and views in my life. So nothing, my intention of interviewing women, I want to hear your body story. There's a connection to this womb piece. And as a
Yeah.
woman of faith, it's important for you to share this. So please go ahead.
Well, and it's also important, even if you're not a woman of faith, it's important because the Christian Bible has impacted Western civilization and this whole world really because of Father Abraham, right? It's Christianity, Islam, and there's another one.
Judaism,
Like,
Judaism.
there you go. And this Bible impacts corporate America, the boardrooms, it impacts our courtrooms, it impacts our White House. So it impacts every person on this planet.
And there are people that are listening and are going to watch this, Nicole, and they're going to be seeing their in their mind, if the Bible isn't something they subscribe, that's what their issue is going to be with that it has such an impact. But
Yeah,
it's clearly impacted your life, Nicole, and it's a part of how you view motherhood and family and really your own body. So
yeah.
I want to hear what you're going to share. I want to hear the
Okay, so
connection.
so this is Revelation 22. It's the last chapter of the Bible.
Okay.
Um, okay. It says Eden restored. It says, then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, flowing with water clear as crystal, continuously pouring out from the throne of God and of the Lamb.
Mm-hmm.
The river was flowing in the middle of the street of the city, and on either side of the river was the tree of life, with its
Mm-hmm.
12 kinds of ripe fruit according to each month of the year. The leaves
Mm.
of the tree of life are for healing of the nations. And every curse will be broken and no longer exist, for the throne of God and of the Lamb will be there in the city. So for me, when I saw that passage,
Mm.
I immediately thought of our uterus and our ovaries.
I got a visual instantly, Nicole.
And like people say, what's the purpose of life? It's, if you look at the animal world, it's to protect the young, to keep the pack
Mm,
alive, to keep it
mm,
going, right? Like it's having children and loving, and
mm.
we're all a vital part of that,
Yeah,
protecting these children. And those children come from the womb, and it's right there in the Bible, like clear as black and white to me.
yeah.
Um,
And I think and I appreciate you sharing that, Nicole. I really do. And it's a conversation I have been getting into with other women in my circles that haven't physically bore a child yet is how can motherhood even look differently? Is it fostering a child? Is it adopting? So what does, yes, the core of like you bear in your womb, but how can that essence of being the mama bear still be passed on in other ways of looking at motherhood? So that's kind of an interesting conversation I'm having in some of my closer inner circles. That's why I always love to keep actual, like physical mothers that have carried a child in their womb. I always want to hear their story and how they see motherhood, even if you didn't actually carry a child. I'm always
yeah,
curious. I talk to my mom about it quite often.
yeah.
So,
Well, and that's like what we said earlier, that feminine essence. And like you said, on day 3 of your cycle,
mm-hmm.
you, it's this energy around you. And
Yeah.
whether you bore a child or not, everybody wants to feel loved. And that's
Mm,
the essence, and protected, right? And that's the
yeah.
essence of a mother, is to
Yes.
love your
Ooh, that's
child and
great,
protect them.
Nicole. Yes, that is a great point. Ooh,
And
because
adults need to be mothered.
yes.
And mothering is
Mm,
not judging. It's not,
mm.
it's just accepting and being, it's a landing, a safe landing spot, like we said
Ooh,
earlier.
I love
um
that.
and we all have that capacity.
Oh, I love
So
that, Nicole. Oh, hon. Well, girl, we just didn't talked on through. Honey, I appreciate you so much. And I hope our 20-year reunion is still on and popping for the spring of
yes,
next year, because I would love to see you and give you a big old Texas style hug.
amen.
All right,
Oh,
hon.
thank you so much.
Thanks for sharing your body story.
Okay, bye.
Bye.